I don't think it's going to happen, but Kristen can dream. Check on Twitter.
Show. It'd be great. I would watch. I got you.
For more on this, we bring in South Carolina radio host Josh Kimbrell, who thankfully will not be dancing. Neither will I during this segment. Live pictures right now, Josh, of Bernie Sanders not in South Carolina, but in a very cold Boston, Massachusetts. Out there in Boston Common, you can see him bundled up, used to the Vermont and New England cold. What do you make, Josh, of the fact that Sanders has really already moved on from South Carolina? Is he conceding defeat?
I don't know that he's conceding defeat, but I got to tell you, Leland, I'm excited because after today, I don't have to hear any more Tom Steyer ads in South Carolina, so praise God for that. Look, Sanders has surged in the last week in South Carolina, largely because of Republican voters. It's starting to catch on now that the open primaries in my state are giving an opening for Tea Party activists to get Republicans to go cross over and vote in their Democratic primary. The numbers are very real there, Leland. So the polls between Biden and Sanders have tightened. I still think Biden wins here, but Sanders has surged because so many GOP voters who can't vote in a Republican primary today, led by Tea Party activists like Karen Martin and Stacey Shea and others in South Carolina, it could make a difference. It could be way closer than the national media right now believes that it is.
You put out a couple of names of, I'm guessing, local and national conservative activists. Perhaps the greatest Republican activist of them all, the President of the United States, was talking about just that issue that you brought up last night in South Carolina. Take a listen.
So, who is easier for us, not me, for us to beat? Ready? Crazy Bernie? Or Sleepy Joe? I don't know. I think maybe Crazy Bernie has it a little bit.
You take that as an implicit request by the president for folks to go out and vote for Bernie Sanders, even if they're Republicans?
I can tell you that that's the way conservative activists in South Carolina take it. A lot of people who are on the fence about crossing over and voting in the Democratic primary felt like they got permission from the commander-in-chief to do that last evening. And if you think about it, you had about 14,000 people at that arena last night. Now, I don't think all 14,000 are going to go cross over, but what if it's 5,000 of them? What if it's 6,000 of them? It could actually make a substantial difference. Again, I think Biden wins here, Leland, but I think Sanders will come in closer than people think. And Steyers, I think, will finish third because he spent $13 million on South Carolina television ads.
This brings up an important point for Republicans going into the general election. Charlie Kirk, Lisa Booth, among others, have all been warning Republicans, be careful what you wish for. Bernie Sanders is the biggest threat to President Trump winning a second term. You don't seem to agree with that.
Well, the polls don't seem to agree with that. If you look at 538's projections, if you look at a whole host of university projections, whether it's George Washington University, Richmond University, it's a landslide if President Trump heads off against Bernie Sanders. Look, it terrifies me that there's going to be potentially a socialist at the top of the Democratic ticket. Who would have ever thought we'd be here in 2020? But I do believe if Sanders is the Democratic nominee, Trump will win at least 380 electoral votes. I don't think it will be close, Leland. I really don't.
You know, Josh, there were a lot of Democrats I talked to in 2016 who didn't think it was going to be close if Donald Trump was the nominee and running against Hillary Clinton. There were a lot of Democrats who were salivating over the idea of running against Donald Trump. Is there a little bit of hubris by Republicans in this? And I think you would probably agree. You'd rather have, if the choice was between Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders, you'd rather have Joe Biden as president. Might you have to be careful what you wish for here?
No, that's a good point. I mean, certainly I've thought about it quite a bit. I will not be one of the Republicans crossing over to vote today just because out of principle. But I will tell you that Biden would be certainly better than Bernie, but I do think Bernie's more beatable. Nevertheless, I understand the parallels to 2016, but here's the difference, Leland. You've got a candidate running as an open socialist in a country that's largely free market capitalist oriented across every demographic group, across every age, across every race. And I just don't think a message of socialism borderlining on collectivism would work. I just don't think it works in the United States of America.
Real quick, bringing you back to this point about South Carolina and its unique demographics, because you have a huge African-American population, but it's a very red state. So you've got some inconsistencies there in terms of what matters, the primary versus the general. Have you been talking to any African-American voters who are, say, a little bit turned off by Bernie Sanders and some of the views you just espoused? You got 15 seconds.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, African-American voters are not socialist, and they tend to be fairly traditional on social issues. So, I think they're turned off by Sanders' message. The only reason he's getting a bump is crossover votes.
You've been saying that for a while now. Josh, appreciate it. Thank you very much. The president coming up in 45 minutes or so about the coronavirus. We'll break it down coming up.